You're still watching Prime Morning, and this segment is Prime Inside. A building collapse has been on the increase in recent times. We've seen a lot of media houses report this. In recent times, we've heard of a building that collapsed in Anakrom where one died. In actually Old Botiano, we also saw 7 people who were injured because of a building collapse. What is the cause of all of these? Now, when we talk about building collapse, we know that improper architecture, a structure can be a cause of building collapse. We know that natural hazards can also be a cause of building collapse. We talk about even how the things that are put into the building structure can also be a cause of building collapse. Talking about construction techniques as well. All of that could be a factor. But then the question here is, what is really the factor of it? What are the laws that are there with regards to how to put up a building? And what are the authorities doing about these buildings? And for those who do not have license, who actually operate in engineering works, what comes after that? When they don't have a license and yet they build and the building collapses. Helping me with this particular conversation, I have 2 great gentlemen who help us have all the detailed information this morning. I have with me Gabriel Tego, who is a development planner. He's retired actually. He is with the Gamashi Development Agency at AMA, and also Architecture Foster Osei Akono, who is the president of Ghana Institute of Architects. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How are you today?
We are very fine.
And thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Like I said earlier, there's been a lot of building collapse in recent times. So let me start with you, engineer or architecture. That's the architect. Let me start with you, architects, because this is where we ask the question, what really is the cause of building collapse?
Well, the cause of building collapse can be attributed to a number of factors. First, let me say the architect is trained, or the training of the architects commences from the university. And in Ghana, we have Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology and Central University training students to become architects. For KNUST, you have to study for 6 years. And for Central University, you have to study for 5 years. Having done that, having gone through your academic qualification, you then have to intern with a registered architectural firm for a minimum of 2 years. That's if you studied from KNUST, you have to intern for 2 years, after which you can write the professional exams. If you also studied at Central University, you have to intern for a minimum of 3 years, after which you then qualify to write the professional exam. So you're talking about 8 years before you can write the professional exams. And once you pass the professional exam, then the title, which is the legal title, architect, is then conferred on you, after which you can begin to practice and stamp drawings, among others. So the drawings that are stamped are then submitted to the planning authorities. But it's not only the architectural drawings. There was a need for structural drawings. There was also the need for soil investigation, what we call geotechnical survey. There was a need for, depending on the scale of the project, for environmental impact assessment, for traffic impact assessment. So all this come together, and then it is submitted to the assembly for development permit or planning permission, among others. Once the permit is issued, it doesn't end there. The most important aspect is the construction, what we call quality assurance, quality control, which the developer or whoever is building would have to involve the assembly by stage. So assuming you are ready to commence construction, you need to inform the assembly of your program. When you set out, they need to come and sign off and say things have been done right. You can go every stage that you get to. Also, the materials that are used, the concrete, there was a mix which is designed by the engineer, and you have to adhere to that. you can only adhere to that if you do what we call cube test periodically to
Right.
test the strength of the concrete, among others. And if all these are not done, first with your planning, quality assurance, among others, if they are not done, then we'll tend to have what we call bad buildings, which we may collapse during construction, among others. Also, the supervision by the professional is critical. It's very critical in this instance. And it is not only the architect that will supervise the building, or the professionals within the built environment. You talk about the mechanical engineer, the electrical engineer, the plumbing engineer, the civil engineer, and then the structural engineer, including the architects. The architect will be leading the team, among others. For bigger projects, there seem to be some order. But when it comes to smaller projects, and especially the, let's say, residential and churches, Ghana, everybody think that he knows how to build because he or she has done a building or two.
Yeah.
And especially when you go to the churches where they put building committee together to supervise. And it will interest you to know that you go in and none of them is a professional in the building and construction industry. Not the other thing too is capacity. When you go to the assembly, that's the regulators who have to even issue the permit. Do they have the right capacity to do what they do? I went to TRC a couple of months ago, and it will interest you to know that the planning officer there is an accounts officer. And how, I mean, with this, how do we... So
it means that there's a little bit of resource constraint there,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So let me bring you in, Gabriel. You have been with AMA, and people actually do come for permits there because obviously when you have to build, you ought to have a permit. And people have complained that after the permit, there's nothing else. They come in for the permit, but the inspection is not as periodic as it's supposed to be. What are some of the reasons why they don't get the periodic inspections?
Thank you very much, and good morning to your listeners. I think it's all related to human resource constraints. Not most of the assemblies are not really equipped in terms of the professionals that we need. Like my colleague said, we went to a district and then a planning officer, an accountant is a planning officer. Where does that really click in? So the resource, in terms of human resources, is also a constraint per the municipal or district assemblies, because they are the planning authorities on the ground, and everything emanates from them till the building is constructed. But where there are lapses or constraints, resource constraints in terms of the requisite qualification, then you have such challenges. People normally they think, once you get a permit, then you can go home and do your own thing. But that is not it. The building has to be inspected right from the
scratch.
From scratch.
The setting out.
The setting out, the concrete, everything, the platform, everything must be supervised. And in the supervision, you need to fall on the technical officers who are competent enough to do the supervision. But as I said, the whole system is really constrained in terms of requisite personnel, so you have such lapses occurring. So once you get your permit, you feel, I can go and build, I don't need to go to the assembly. They'll just worry me why I can build, but that is not it. It is for these reasons. That is why you need a technical person to supervise the work so that you do the proper thing, so in the end it will not cause
But then
damage.
the permit is not free. Whatever you pay for when you go for the permit is supposed to cover the whole periodic test, right?
Yeah.
And the inspection. So I'm paying for this, but I'm being told that there is shortage with regards to personnel.
Yeah, that is the
So why are
reality.
you taking the money then?
The money is not to pay for the work or whatever. It is a processing fee. Once you are obtaining the permit you have to pay a processing fee, and that is it. So once you get the permit, then you have to go to the assembly, impress upon them to supervise your work because it's their duty. If they don't do it and anything happens, it goes back to them. So it is upon them to do the supervision, the proper supervision. You don't need to pay for that. You understand? But people feel, well, I've got my permit. What else do I need? I don't need a technical person to supervise. And that is where the challenge is. And of course, our settlements have so expanded that the inadequacy of these technical officers also impact negatively on the work because they are not adequate to supervise even the little that is available, let alone a whole district. You can imagine the way construction is going on in this country. Everybody is in a rush to put up something. So they also have constraints on them in terms of time availability to go and do the proper things.
Let me bring you in, Foster. I'm building my project and I feel like this is my building. Why do I need the assembly to come in to keep having these periodic tests?
So you're talking about public safety. I mean, that's a key thing. You are not knowledgeable about building. The assembly, that's the government, controls whatever is being developed. Okay. Hence, you need them to, it is yours. But what you have to understand is that we have something called planning. You buy the land, the assembly determines what has to be built on the land. So if the assembly has planned the area for, let's say, educational purposes, you cannot use it for residential unless you apply to them for change of use. Okay. As the assembly has a lot of control when it comes to the built environment. It can be a farmland to start with. Once it is planned for development, you don't have control of that. They have to let you know what has to be done on it. And that's the main reason why.
So in the instance where they are not present, because now we are hearing the challenges that they have.
All right, okay.
In the instance they are not present, what do you do? Because I've paid for a permit over 6 months. My project is on hold. What do I do then?
All right, okay. So I'm talking about the private sector, is ready to step in to support the assembly, to collaborate with them. So whatever they cannot do in terms of the development control, we will support them to do it, like it's been done in other countries. You have the private sector getting in there to help or to assist with the permitting process, to assist with the development or the quality assurance, among others. The assembly will definitely sign off after that, but we will do the legwork and then make sure that all this thing is. And it is not only the architects, talking about the engineers, the planners, the quantity surveyors. And what the other thing we are also telling the government, which we've started a conversation on, is to make sure that every MMDA has one architectural firm, one structural engineering firm, one, so that their institution will be monitoring them and tax them to effectively involve themselves in development control.
Right.
You see, there is so much that the country is losing due to the fact that the assembly do not have the capacity. So, for instance, taxes. Okay, once you apply for a permit, he just mentioned the fee, but the building will be completed and habitated, and you have to be paying what's it called, property taxes. Okay, it starts from when you apply for the building permit. So the assembly must have a log that maybe in 7 years' time, there's a residential building. It will be completed. It will be occupied. They have to issue the certificate for habitation, and then they have to begin to pay property tax. So we can even plan ahead how much revenue will be coming from property taxes and what development we can use. So when the private sector comes in, I'm talking about the professional bodies, that's the architects, the Ghana Institution of Engineering, Ghana Institution of Surveyors, someone will be able to sanitize the system. We only need the support of the government. And by that...
Now, Foster, when the private sector comes in, who forfeits the costs?
You see, the developer is paying money for the development that they are going to do. Okay, so it is. We definitely have to look at the math. Okay, how much are you paying for this development? What is that money used for? Okay, how do we apportion it so that we have a sanitized environment? That's all we are looking at.
In this case, I'm asking you this because somebody watching will say that I have paid the assembly for this. I have paid the assembly for the permit, and the assembly will definitely come and do all these, checks. Now I have to go and contract the private sector to come in to do all of these works for me.
No. When it comes to the development control, it is within the purview of the assembly.
Okay.
So the private sector stepping in is supporting the assembly to execute it. So whatever money they charge, it's a percentage that is not going to be on top of that. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not going to be. You see, like I said, for well-organized projects, you have the private sector as consultants to the developer. Okay. And they make sure that everything is done to the latter.
Okay.
And then the assembly comes in.
Gabriel, we have a lot of recent building collapse. Who can we apportion the blame to?
It's easy to apportion the blame to the developer because in the first place, you have your investment that you are doing and you need the necessary requisite technical supervision to accomplish your objective. But if you decide to do it on your own, without recourse to the technical people who will supervise the job, then it means you are creating a challenge or problem for yourself. So at the end of the day, if anything happens, it's your investment that is lost. But the assembly is also obliged to supervise you. But as I said, they are overwhelmed by the job because of the.
But if I should pay for a building permit and the building does collapse, can't we associate the collapse of the building to the assembly because the assembly was supposed to come inspect? However, the assembly is saying that, yes, they struggle with personnel, and hence I had to go ahead and build my own.
Why should you go ahead?
So you should wait?
Wait and put pressure on the institution that is responsible to give you the requisite technical supervision and advice so you accomplish your objective. But if you decide, well, I want to do my own thing, then you face the consequences when this collapse occurs. So it's best to make the effort to get the technical people to do the supervision. In fact, right from the setting out and everything, you need supervision. The creation of the platform, everything, you need supervision, you need technical input and advice. So if you tend to ignore all these things, then it means you are prepared to take a risk, which in the long run can be fatal. So go in and make sure the one who is supposed to do the work or supervise the work does that to your specification.
So you ought to insist on it.
You ought to insist on it. It's your right. Once you pay for the permit, it is your right.
You have to pay some little monies to be able to get the people.
Well, it could be gratuitous. The women would not decide, but maybe out of your own volition, oh, Charlie, you are tired, just take 10 or 20 for ice water. That is something that you have decided to do. But assemblies are obliged to provide the requisite technical supervision and support to you during your construction. But if at your own discretion you feel, oh, let me give Pakwesi something small, that is your business.
Okay. First, let me bring you in. When we go on site, we see the contractors, we see the masons, we see the tilers, the steel benders and all of that. Is there a law out there that requires them to have a license before they can operate?
No, I mean, currently there was only the Energy Commission has a law regarding the electricians, but for masons, tilers, and others, there are no laws certifying them to work. And I think there's a gap that needs to be filled because you get masons are not good and they do not even understand because of their level of education. They do not even understand the mix. Times they will be telling you are using too many cement and things like that. Because the cement, water, stone, and sun has a certain ratio depending on the strength and then depending on the type of structure that you are doing. And this has to be adhered to. So if I think the onus is on us as citizens and for that matter the government to make sure that we put all this thing in place. We begin to train artisans and certify artisans so that, I mean, not only technically, but
so we
even
don't really
ethically.
We have them, but by law, there's nothing there governing them by law. What about the Act 819, which was passed in 2011 for the engineers?
That's the engineering.
Okay, so they don't fall under it at all.
No, it is for professionals.
Okay.
That's the Engineering Council, which regulates the practice of engineering. Like the architects, that's Ghana Institute of Architects. Architecture is regulated by the government. The practice of architecture is regulated by the government. And
right.
the agency that regulates it is called Architects Registration Council.
Okay, so talking about all of these, we also know that when the building collapsed, actually, there are people who are supposed to be held responsible. You said that an individual, some way, somehow. And it's also to be criminalized, right? If there's a building collapse. So in times of criminalization, who does the police go for?
You remember the case of Malcolm?
Yes.
They just went for the district engineer because technically he is the one responsible for the supervision and he represents the local authority on the ground. So straight away, he is the one that is focused on as being maybe neglecting his job. But it also depends on the enthusiasm of the one investing to consult the right technical people to do the right thing. So I would say it's a two-way affair. It's not just one man who has to supervise. If he's supervising you, advises you, use this amount of mixture in laying the foundation, and you decide to cut corners and do what you like, eventually you will suffer the consequences because he can explain himself that he gave you the technical advice, you didn't take it.
And you didn't listen.
Yes. So.
But has anybody been prosecuted so far because of a building
that has been the challenge. That has been a challenge. I don't think over the years we've really been holding people who are responsible for this supervision to book or bring them to order. And because of that lapse, people are encouraged, oh, I don't need a building inspector. I say I can do my own thing, and then it goes ahead to do it. But when the consequence, something goes wrong, then they resort to look at the technical person who should have been supervising the work, but didn't do it.
Right.
And it's all because of the human resource constraint that we have with the system.
All right, Foster, some people also say that there are so many cutting of corners with regards to the building materials. What about the quality of building materials on the market? Could that also be a factor?
Yes, that is also a factor. But what we have to understand is every building is designed. There are specifications written both by the architects, the structural engineer, among others. Okay, you go to the market and you ask for 12 millimeter bar and they will give you 10.5 millimeter. So what it means is the engineer would have to design using that 10 or 10.5 millimeter bar. It means that he would need more reinforcement than if he was using a bigger size. So the quality of material on the market is something that has to be checked, and that may have to fall under the Ghana Standards Authority to make sure that when we say it is this, it is that. But you see, the other thing is when the materials get to the site, do they run any test on even those materials to make sure that they are the right materials that they are, to make sure that the mix as per the design or the specification is what they are using? You see, so it's a number of factors.
Who's supposed to run the tests?
The test is supposed to be run by the
quality control?
Yeah, okay, so we talk about quality control, quality assurance.
Right.
Yeah, so, and I think the Highways Authority has laboratory to test all those materials. So you take your material, like concrete, for instance, we have what is called cube test. you once you prepare the first batch, you do you prepare the materials, and then if it is 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, you send it for them to test to understand the strength. Okay, but in most of these smaller projects, you get it being done on the bigger projects. But the smaller, somebody say, I've saved, I'm building my home. They don't care about this because it is not checked. Okay, it is not checked. You see, the assembly, in addition to everything, are supposed to issue what we call certificate for habitation. Once you complete your building, you can't just move in like that.
Right.
They have to issue. Right? They have to issue a certificate that everything is okay, so you can move in. But this can be done if they were involved right from the word go, to know that things are done right. You cannot go at the tail end and issue that, and at the end of the day, if something happens, even the materials that are used, let's say glue, for instance, may contain substances that when we inhale, it will affect the human body, you know, and all these things have to be checked. You know?
Ni, do we have building codes in Ghana? And how can they improve our stoppage with regards to building collapse?
Yeah, we have building codes. We have LI 1630, which sets out the building code, the regulations and everything that must be done. But the issue of having the code and then conforming to the code are two different.
That's where the issue is.
That's where the issue is. Somebody, he's got his money, he wants to put up a building. That's it. Let me go and put up the building, get some wayside constructor to come and do the thing without recourse to a technically sound person to do.
But who is responsible for the check of that?
Like I said, the district assemblies are the planning authorities in the local areas, but where they are also constrained in terms of human resources, then it becomes a problem. Imagine maybe a wide area with over 50 buildings coming up. They don't even have there are some district assemblies who don't have engineers. The works department is headed by some low-rank officer. It doesn't have the real competence to go and provide the necessary technical support. So eventually, anything that comes out of whatever he's doing becomes shoddy to the extent that it's not providing the proper supervision.
Foster, do we have a shortage of engineers in the system?
No, we have a lot of professionals. I mean, on the register of architects, for instance, we have over 1,000 architects. And like I said, we can assign architectural firms to all the 261 MMDAs and make sure that the institute monitors their performance. You see, the worrying thing is there was no planning for the assemblies. They know their boundaries, or some litigate on their boundaries, but anybody at all can buy land and say, oh, I'm going to put a school, I'm going to do this, and there was no planning. Talking about capacity, we have the capacity, we have to put, and that will help also to reduce the graduate unemployment.
Right.
Okay, because now the firms cannot employ graduates who have come because the jobs are not there. But there are certain avenues that can be created to curb this graduate unemployment, in addition to sanitizing our environment. Okay. Kukomemle, for instance, is an old suburb, but it needs to be regenerated. Okay, there was an assembly in charge of this area. What are they doing about it? You see somebody knocking down things to renovate. No, and they have done in haphazard manner.
And it's not supposed to be so. Do buildings expire?
Yes and no. Yes, and we have buildings that are over 500 years and whatever. It depends on the quality, and it has to start from the word go. You can change the use of a building. Okay, so it was a residential, it is designed as a residential, but along the line, its use can be changed based, like most of the buildings around are now being changed into offices, commercial, retail, among others. Okay, so buildings, when they are done very well, the use can be changed, but will never expire.
But whenever you want to change the use, you have to
resort to the assembly.
To the assembly. But what's the challenge with the assembly merging with the private sector?
There's no challenge.
So why is it not
dialogue?
Well, there was a challenge, and we see it. You see, the assembly, there are a lot of structure, funny structures there. So, for instance, you go, they use their red pen to write "stop work," but that building will continue to. They will continue to build until it is completed. Meanwhile, they've written "stop work." You ask what happened. Okay, this conversation, like the institute. Supporting the assembly started over 2 decades ago, but it's always hit a rock. Okay, we have commenced that conversation again, and we're hoping that this time round we'll be able to get somewhere. We've started a conversation with Council of State. We're bringing the other professional bodies that's in the built environment together. And we'll all make sure that we have a good roadmap. So, for instance, the collapse of buildings, 4 buildings collapsed in different locations within the country within a span of 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Okay, we as professionals in the built environment have come together. We are forming committees to go to the ground. I think by Friday or so we'll inaugurate the committees to go to the ground and find out the reasons why this happened. Okay, you can't have a building in an institution, a tertiary institution like UDS, the campus collapsing. No, something might have gone wrong. So our findings will not just leave it on the shelf. There will be recommendations so that this wouldn't occur in the future. And we'll make sure that when we are inaugurating the committee, we invite the media. And then when we send our report to the necessary stakeholders, to invite the media for you to know what the causes are and what the recommendations are. Because we cannot go on like that as a country. We need to do the right thing.
Any innovative solutions that we can have to prevent the collapse of buildings?
Yeah. Yes.
What are some of them?
What are some of the the basic thing is the right thing has to be done right from the word go. The technical, the professionals,
right.
We'll have to make sure that they are the development control is very, very critical. Quality assurance, quality control is very, very critical. Stage by stage sign off. So you do the foundation. That is sign off. The foundation is completed. You can do your superstructure. The necessary test is done regarding the mix, among others. Even the iron rods, the sizes, cut to see whether it's high tensile or whatever. All these quality assurance, quality control strategies will have to be put in place, no matter how small the building is. So the citizenry should have a change mindset.
That's the most important.
You mentioned the citizenry must really appreciate the work of the technicians, of the technical people. Most people see it as a bother. I have my own one I'm putting in my building. Why should I go or resort to?
So what happens to these people who don't have the license? Talking about the masons, the tilers, and co. What happens to them? Should we still use them, or we should go for only the professionals?
No. You see, you have the artisans and then you have the professionals. The professionals, like an architect like myself, I've designed, I've specified what has to be done. So I've done the paperwork. The mason is the one who is going to put the brick and mortar together. I have to supervise him. However, the mason will need some certification. He will need some training. Okay, most of them finish, let's say, the JSS or whatever, without any other formal training, just apprenticeship by following a master, and now I'm a mason. And then along the line they are contractors and what have you. They need formal training, formal certification training. Okay, and with that, I think the quality of our tradesmen will improve, and the quality of our buildings.
So it means that we should have more training classes for them.
Yes.
And this should be organized by the assembly or by the private sector?
The assembly can facilitate that, but in conjunction with the professional bodies.
Right.
You know, like electricity as a company is doing now. They are training those who do the wiring and things, so that if they don't do the wiring for you, it's very difficult to get electricity coming to you. So we need to formalize these things and make sure that we enforce them.
Right. We are hoping that very soon all of them will have certificates to be able to have, you know, a very good building one day, because we don't want to hear of any more building collapse. And I'm very grateful that you could join us this morning. Before you go, let me ask you your final words, Gabriel, before you go.
I think we must always resort to these assemblies as a planning authority. We shouldn't be frustrated by the procedures we have to go through. If you need to get documents, go through it. If you need to get supervision on your building, make sure you get it so that we all ensure sanity.
Ghanaians want to know why you can't make the process a bit faster, because the delay, I have the money yet, it has to be delayed. What's the problem?
No,
apart from the fact that, yes, you've told us, why can't it be a bit faster?
People assume it's a delay, but there are timelines we work with.
Timelines.
Yeah.
So what is the maximum timeline?
Or at least we said by 3 months, we should be able to get your permit. But also, it depends on the number of applications available. You understand? If there are about 200 applications pending, it will be very difficult to work within that period. So there's a plus or minus delay in the way the permits are issued. But it behoves on you to get a permit. It behoves on you. That's why this stop work, remove and things take place. If you have a permit, you can do your building.
Pastor, you are laughing.
Yes. If you have your permit, you can.
But the stop work is not just about permits. Sometimes it's even the quality of, things, resources you are putting in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the stop work is not just about permits, is it?
Oh, yes. It depends. Some people put in structures which have not been authorized. Once it's not been authorized, it must get off the way. Or maybe it's creating a nuisance somewhere. Somebody has put up a building in a waterway. He knows if he applies for permit, then they won't give him. So he will steal his way to put up the structure unsupervised. And these are some of the challenges, prevailing in the system.
Okay. We are hoping that will be criminalized very soon. Yeah. Very, very soon. And, people will be prosecuted. Foster, your final words before you go.
Yeah, I think it is critical for the private sector to support government, and for that matter, the assembly, to do what we call development control, to enable us sanitize our built environment. And also, it is critical that the artisans are trained, and there's a program through the government as a regulator to train them with the support from the private sector. And it's also critical that we take planning very seriously. We are advocating for every MMDA, all the 261 MMDA, to have a master plan to cover the entire area and strategically develop facing mechanism so that we can go by that. It is only true that as a country we'll be proud of our built environment.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. Super grateful. And they've said it all. So we ought to have the artisans being trained so that they can have some certificates. We also hope that the assemblies will be, well equipped and also have enough personnel and be able to merge with the private sector so they can work hand in hand and have a good, yes?
I think collaboration. We need to collaborate with the private sector because they have all the technical people. Unfortunately, because of the difference in wages, most of the technical competent people prefer going
to the private
sector instead
right.
of coming to work with a local government.
So we hope the government will do all of these and we can have proper building structures. Thank you so much for being here. My guests for today have been Gabriel Nii Tego. He's Teiko.
Yes.
Tego.
Yes.
Development planner. He's retired though, but he was with the Gamashi Development Agency at AMA, and also architects Foster Osei-Akono, president of Ghana Institute of Architects. Thank you so much for being here once again.